Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today, I am truly honored and excited to introduce a very special guest, Aditya Oberai, who is joining us all the way from India. When it comes to Aditya's expertise, he is one of the well known Microsoft MVPs and a tech expert who helps community to build amazing apps and tools. In fact, for his outstanding community contribution, he has been recognized at major tech competitions like Microsoft Imagine Cup and Major League Hacking. In fact, most recently, he was named as best developer relations professional for his exceptional work in helping others technologists to grow. So, today in this episode, we will dive into Aditya's career, his involvement with the community. But before we begin, I would like to thank Aditya for joining us today in this episode. And now I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us something about yourself.
Thank you so much, Amit. It's lovely to be able to join here. I'm really glad we're able to have this conversation. Just a bit about me. I think you covered most of this, but um, hi once again to everyone. It's lovely to be interacting with you all. I am Aditya Oberai. I professionally work as a developer advocate at AppRate, which is an open source backend as a service company. So, fortunately, work keeps me very, very close developer ecosystem right now. I have been involved with tech communities since 2019. Back when I was in college, that's where I started off. Um, the Microsoft community was really my entryway into this larger world, which was wonderful to have. And I got a chance to explore a number of different kinds of tech. I spent a lot of time around cloud, serverless, backend APIs, a bit of cross-platform apps, a bit of Windows apps, and so on. And that's really brought me to where I am, working with communities of developers and helping them build their applications better, quicker, more efficiently. Um, and so that's a bit about me. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, Aditya, like as you just mentioned, in fact, we all know that you have had such a diverse and inspiring journey in the tech so far. So, can you please tell us like how it all began? Like initially, what sparked your interest into the technology and for community building?
It's such a layered question sometimes, right? When we ask someone where their love for tech came out of, I think it's very interesting for me because my love for tech comes from childhood experiences, more specifically video games,
Okay.
right? I think games are such a wonderful entryway into tech for so many people because
Correct.
I look at video games till this date as magic, right? The kind of stuff they enable you to do. Um, you're able to participate with software, interact with it, and really, really engage in a manner deeper than most other tools we might have. And so video games were magic for me, and that's what really got me interested in tech. I think that's and this was always a debate for me because until class 12th, I did not know whether I'd be pursuing computer science. My
Okay.
other parallel love at the same time was cars and automobiles. And so that was my dilemma. Um, Computer science as a career happened to me just primarily because even though I had a similar enough interest in both, I think some of my skills aligned more with computer science. And that had been a result of my academics subjects I'd chosen. I had computer science back in school as well. That I also did a career aptitude test as a part of school, fortunately, just to help figure out what careers could be better for me. And computer science skills tended to align more with my reasoning ability and so on. And I think with communities, that's something that I really came across more after college.
Okay.
And not after college, rather during college, after I started college, because I got involved with some of these groups very early on. Back in 2018, when I joined, the first thing I did was get involved with our hackathon and tech fest back at Amity University in Noida.
Okay.
And that's really what exposed me to what communities could enable, how it brought people together to collaborate, how it brought people to support each other and build some really, really cool stuff. I think in the world of Harry Potter, you've got the wizards, but you've also got the wand maker who ensures
Right.
that wizards can create magic. And I feel like the wand maker thinker side of it really took to me. Um, I appreciated and enjoyed the opportunity to be able to help people build some really cool stuff, and so that's what I started investing more time in throughout college, independently in the hackathon space and open source, and now fortunately I get to do that professionally as well.
Okay. And yeah, that's true. And in fact, like when we look towards your journey so far, it's clearly seen that you have worked with everything from APIs to cloud and cross-platform apps. So, is there any particular technology or maybe the project there is there anything like project which is close to your heart or which has had an impacting lasting impact on you?
I think, there is a technology that I can't give enough credit to,
Okay.
which some people might be surprised to hear, at least students at times, and it is .NET. Um, .NET is still my first love when it comes to building tools and software. I
Okay.
have thoroughly enjoyed building with it. I don't think I would have taken to development as quickly as I did had it been for something else. I was fortunate that I was in a circumstance that forced me to try to build with C Sharp, and my entry into that was trying to build a Windows app.
Okay.
But I think it's just a certain level of comfort that I discovered with it, and I kept enjoying developing more and more and more with C Sharp and the whole .NET ecosystem. So I spent some time with UWP apps, which is Universal Windows Platform. I spent some time with ASP.NET. I spent time in the serverless ecosystem. And because .NET and C Sharp are such a versatile ecosystem, I was really able to experiment across the board. I spent time with Xamarin quite a lot at
Mhm.
one point of time to build cross-platform apps. So .NET really kept me close enough to tech to keep building, to spend time, because I think one thing that people don't always realize is people who spend time building communities get so immersed in everything else that it's very easy to lose your hand on the tech you're enjoy. Um, .NET somehow kept me going and kept me building with this tech. So .NET I have to give a lot of credit to.
Okay. And let's say, Aditya, if in year 2025, if someone asks you to start a career, so what would you suggest to him? Like should he or she start with .NET, or is there any particular other technology from which they can start? Although like it depends on the interest for sure. But again, like if
Mhm.
overall we have to suggest one thing that yes, this is something that you should start with. So what would be that?
There are two sides to this question. One, of course, is interest areas. What do you
Yes,
want to work with,
correct,
right? Now, if to figure that out, really, you need to spend time experimenting with a lot of tech.
correct.
Um, spend time with .NET, spend time with JavaScript, spend time with TypeScript, Java, Ruby, Python, Dart, whatever you like. You can spend time with that. And if you build a certain level of proficiency, there is something that you're great at, you're gonna find opportunities within that. I think a lot of people take a while to discover that though. I was fortunate to find that for me, but not everyone else is able to find it sometimes. So if it's really about finding a safe option, looking at what the market requires,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that from what I've seen, since I've graduated and my fellow peers and my juniors in college and so on, I think there have always been two safe options for developers to start off. One is C++, the other is Java. I
Yes.
do feel a little biased towards the side of Java,
Mm-hmm.
um, simply because looking at the market, I think the kind of work that most people are doing. This isn't a call against C++. By the way, it's simply just that the job market right now.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen far more roles that require a certain level of proficiency with Java and surrounding frameworks like Spring Boot, for example. So if someone doesn't know what they enjoy and they really want that one starter, which is gonna give them a high chance of getting a job, as software engineers, as backend developers, Java and Spring Boot is a great way to go if you're going towards the front end side of things. Um, the JavaScript TypeScript ecosystem with React and Next is going to bring a lot of opportunities your way as well. But I think the important thing here to keep in mind is that when I say that you should be able to work with Java or Spring Boot, that doesn't mean that's what you restrict yourself to.
Correct.
I, for example, have spent time with ASP, and tomorrow, whether I look at Spring Boot, whether I look at Django, whether I look at Ruby on Rails, the fact is that there are a certain set of patterns that transfer across all of these. Which means that tomorrow, if I've spent some time building my own skill set as a software engineer, not
Correct.
just a Java developer or a C Sharp developer or a Python developer, ideally these principles will transfer across. And that's the important thing to keep in mind, right? When we if tomorrow I'm back in college and I have a course on object-oriented programming with C++, the
Mm-hmm.
crux of that is object-oriented programming. It's not C++. C++ is just enabling you to learn that. And
Yeah.
that's what people have to remember, especially as beginners, because it's very easy to forget in a world of frameworks that as engineers, you pick a tool to solve a problem. You don't pick the tool more and then decide what problem to solve after,
Correct.
right? Each of these tools have got their pros and cons for their purposes. So it's always necessary to have a grasp of those fundamentals. And as long as you've got those, tomorrow, if I need to stop working with C Sharp and work with Java, I know that there is a set of fundamentals that I am comfortable with that will transfer over, and I will be able to write software regardless of language.
Yeah, and I'm also agree with this thing that first thing is for sure the interest, because if you have interest in any particular language, then you should try more
Yeah.
on that, and then it will take you to the right path. And another thing, what I believe is exploring the things by joining the
Hmm.
communities and by joining hackathon, right? And
Absolutely.
because hackathon is also a kind of way to figure out like how people are solving the issues, how they are innovating the new things. And because why I'm asking this question to you, because you were also one of the person who won the major league hacking, and you were one of the top 50 hackers in 2021. So please suggest like what was that experience for you, and like are those kind of hackathons are really helping students or maybe the IT folks?
That's a great question, Amit. I think just as a brief for someone who may not be aware, Major League Hacking is a company that works with a lot of student hackathons and runs their own hackathon weeks and so on to bring and build a sense of hackathon culture among student audiences around the world. And I was fortunate to discover them when they launched their league in India and the Asia Pacific region back in late 2019 is when that happened.
Okay.
And so the top 50 was an initiative that they still run, which is throughout their hackathon league. Um, it would be a way to bring out and share the stories of 50 exemplary individuals who had contributed to the hackathon space as builders, as hackathon organizers, as mentors, and really help expand and share their stories out with the world. And so I think what the top 50 was this summation of a lot of work over a year or two. But I crux of that, the part that I thoroughly enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
was being able to spend time as a hacker working with these different technologies, learning how to work across. Because when we talked about cross-platform like Xamarin or APIs or serverless, all of
Yeah.
these were topics that I actually learned by trying them out at different hackathons.
Okay.
And so the important part of this is that you don't have to run after hackathons just to win. Winning is fun, winning is great, but winning is not the best thing you do at a hackathon. There is so much more you take back, regardless of whether you win or not. No matter what happens, you've built something, you've spent some time learning something new, you're trying to solve a problem, and that should be the goal of a hacker at a hackathon. For me, honestly, that experience was exceptional because I
Mm-hmm.
was an organizer as well. I used to organize this hackathon called Hackon.
Okay.
And the second edition of it, which we organized around 2021, um, we became one of the largest ever student-led hackathons in the world because we had over 8,000 registrants. It was a virtual hackathon. It was back in the COVID period, but we were fortunate to see a lot of support from the community all around the world for this, especially India, of course. So that's the thing about hackathons is it's about growth, it's about learning, it's about coming together and collaborating and solving problems and building cool stuff. And you may get a reward at the end of the day, but
Yes,
you could
right.
also see a project go out there and maybe help someone else. I would rather take that over $100 or a $200 prize. I think there is a far more real impact you can make with these projects.
Correct.
And I was very fortunate to do that with my team during the Imagine Cup. That was very, very impactful for me because we were able to take our work out there and help people with this. So that's really the most important part of being at a hackathon.
Okay, and let's say if a student wants to be a part of this kind of hackathons or other tech events. So, is there any particular website or maybe a particular group that they can join to get information about it? Like, are you aware of anything like that?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. So for Major League Hacking, they have an event listing
Mm-hmm.
on their own website as well,
Okay.
which is mlh.io, so people can look that up. HackerEarth, DevPost, DevFolio, these are all hackathon platforms, and they maintain listings of all hackathons that they're supporting and all the hackathons that are using these platforms. I personally like DevPost a lot. If there is someone, for example, who's involved in Web3, they have to be on DevFolio. HackerEarth has done great in terms of bringing out hiring challenges and hackathon-like or task-based challenges for certain job roles as well. And you can find a big variety of these. Now that list of platforms has really expanded, where some companies just have their own boutique stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
So being out there on social media, being out there, talking to the hacker community, you're gonna find these events. But definitely these platforms like DevPost, Hacker, or DevFolio bring out a big number of opportunities, and everyone can probably find something for them at one of these.
Okay. All right. So let's talk bit about your another achievement, I would say, because later on in your career, you earned the title of Imagine Camp of India in the education category. So, like, what was that project for which you have been recognized with this title? And could you please just share your experience with that project and your overall journey?
Absolutely, yes. And that was quite a journey, if I'm honest. So this is back in 2020, 2021, that particular phase. I think I was in third year of college for the most part. And the Microsoft Imagine Cup was one hackathon competition that I'd always looked up to.
Okay.
Um, the projects you'd see, they were some of the most impactful out there in the world when it comes to hackathons. And so my teammates were two other people who I had been collaborating with in other hackathons. One of them was Simran Makhija and the other was Ekansh Gupta, and I need to shout them out at this.
Yes.
And so the idea that we worked towards was that in developing countries like India and other parts across the world, when we talk about having access to technology, the fact is that a lot of people still cannot afford computers,
Correct.
right? It's difficult to learn how to code, how to build software if you don't have access to computers. But at the same time, there are two other things. One, we're in a world where mobile phones, smartphones have become far more accessible. They've become cheaper. There's far more access to good technology this way. And our education systems for computer science still depend a lot on handwritten code, and people have been able to learn um, how to write code by starting off writing code with pen and paper. And so what we tried to build was a solution that brought both of these worlds together. So we built this application called Code Capture. And what you could do with this was you could click a picture of your code.
Okay.
It would extract it. You could make any edits you wanted to it in your browser. And it was just one, you take a picture and you open it up and it would extract the code from there and you could compile and get the results in your browser. And it was a really interesting piece of tech because we had a web app where you could click a picture of this and get that image. We used Azure's computer vision APIs to extract that code. We then actually had a VM set up where uh, we had a few compilers, like we had a compiler for C++, we had the Java compiler down there, and and we were running, I think, a Flask API on that, which could interact with any binaries underneath, and it would compile that code and return a response of the output from these compilers to us. And we bridged all of this using a few serverless functions on Azure. And so with that, you basically had a system where people could learn how to code and actually write and try their code out
Okay.
without needing a computer in their hands. So it would be accessible not just for individual students, it was being developed for institutions and schools as well. Something that we weren't able to build then, but we had plans for would be a whole virtual classroom setup and assignments and learning courses around that. And we actually tried to build a lesson. I think the one of my favorite parts of that journey, more than just the Imagine Cup win, was that we built an activity with the same concept. We had a learning course on some level of basic JavaScript,
Okay.
and we taught how people how to build an application. Like we had a web app for this. We had this learning content, and it taught people how to write a certain kind of program covering some fundamentals of JavaScript, and they could just click a picture of that and get the responses in the browser. And this activity got selected in the R of Code, which tries to focus on coding education for students all around the world. It's active in 180 plus countries. And we got selected as an official activity for the Hour of Code. So we ourselves directly worked with a number of schools and a number of students. And I'm sure there were more who discovered it off the website and tried it out as well. But we were able to make a real impact with students. And I say that my team, we worked directly with over 250 students at least and helped them write their programs with this. So we were able to make a very, very real impact. And I think that's probably my favorite part of this journey, that we did something very, very real for a bit there.
Yeah, this project sounds really very interesting. So this is live, right? So how users can utilize this application? Like,
It
is it
used to be
available?
live right now. It's not.
Okay.
Some of the code though is still open source. It's still there on GitHub.
Okay.
Um, But at least the JavaScript activity that I was talking about, that is on GitHub. So if someone wants to self-host it, they can. I would recommend testing and trying it out. I think Azure's changed its APIs since, so I wouldn't want to comment and say that it's going to work out of the box. People might need to try it out. It's just there was a point at which while building this, we had a web version. I tried building something with Xamarin as well. So there was an app version of this as well that people could try out. But somewhere along the way, we hit a point where we had to evaluate how much future we saw of growing this as a company. And I think it's just for the three of us, we saw very different directions in our own lives. So at least some of this code is out there. It's open source that people can try out. Um, but it was a good part of the journey. It was something good that we did for a while. And I think we were happy enough with that at the moment. But the fundamental idea is not very difficult to implement, to be honest.
Okay.
It's just like, for example, the VM part was something that could be a little challenging, but there are a few code compilation APIs that people can use. And I tried one of those with the Xamarin version of the app. So that's all up there on GitHub. If someone wants to look at that code, they can definitely do that anytime.
Yeah, in fact, this is one of the best opportunity. Like if someone is interested in developing these kind of tools, so they can try to explore the code which
Exactly.
is present on GitHub. So this is one of the best way to learn, I
Yeah,
think. Okay.
agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Yeah. And Aditya, like you have seen both sides of hackathon, like as a participant and as a winner. Then later on, now often you join as a mentor and judge. So what do you look like for a project, especially like what are those aspects that you look for or that is a standout for a hackathon projects for you?
Good question there. I think so. For example, the first big part that people often forget is that when you're
Hmm.
at a hackathon, you're not building something for the sake of building something,
Right.
right? One mistake that a lot of people do is they're going to think of the same other project that they've heard about from 10 other people.
Hmm.
My thing is, if I've seen this project 10 other times, there's nothing novel about the idea, and the idea is what matters the most.
Correct.
Right? Tech is how you implement an idea, how you solve a problem. But if your problem is not something you figure out, it doesn't matter
Correct.
how you solve it. So it's important to have an idea beforehand, right? That idea is important. And the way I judge how impactful a problem is, my first step is I've thought of a problem. Let's see whether it solves my own issues.
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is yes, I then evaluate and see if it solves 10 other people I know. It solves their
Correct.
issue. Usually, if you get to that point, that's good enough. Because then at that point, it's a real problem, right? You can explain why this problem matters.
Yes.
Now, if ideally with your research you see that this is a society level problem, that is best case scenario for your idea.
Correct.
Um, this is also how startups happen, right? And that's what I think about when, with hackathons is if I'm out there, I'm not trying to build just another project. I'm trying to build a product. I'd separate out the thinking process of
Right.
uh, being at a hackathon that way, right? And I think what a lot of people underestimate is that when it's a totally new idea, you may just surprise yourself with how well you solve it. A lot of people get afraid of ideas because they think they're too difficult to solve. But if more people just tried it out without worrying about whether it's difficult or not, I think people
Correct.
would do wonders that they don't think they could.
Yes.
So it's really about figuring out that important problem or idea that you need to build towards, and having some level of belief that you can actually do stuff around it.
Yeah, that is very
Um,
important.
yeah.
Okay. All right. And now I think it's time to discuss about your another contribution, because apart from your DevRel work and community contribution, you also run a really insightful blog at newsletter.oberoi.dev. So could you please tell us like what all just introduce the blog like and share like what it is all
Yeah.
about.
So I run this blog slash newsletter, which is called Another Random Community Newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason I started this is because I'm so professionally involved in social media,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, actually a lot of times, I have to be moderate about my opinions, right? And that's totally fair, by the way. I think social media is a scary space sometimes. And you've got to be careful about how you express and share. But that being said, we all as humans have opinions, right? And so
Correct.
I wanted a space where I could talk out aloud about what I think, what I feel about certain problems, certain challenges. Sometimes those are in tech, sometimes those are in community, sometimes those are around DevRel. I think one of my last issue was about this whole discussion and debate around AI art
Mm-hmm.
after um, that blew up on Twitter. And so it's really a space for me to talk aloud, and if someone wants to read and subscribe, they can. So I've been running this for almost 3 years now. It's not something that it's public, it's out there, but I've not turned it into a growth channel by any means. It's really just a space for me to talk out. I've had consistent issues every single month. So there are over 30 issues right now, and we've crossed 1,000 subscribers
Mm-hmm.
on that newsletter now. So that's amazing.
Okay. All right. So Aditya, like behind every successful person, there is a group of network, right? There is a large network of support, maybe in terms of family members, friends, colleagues, or anyone, right? So for you, like who has been the that key person in your life who have helped you and played a vital role behind your journey?
I've always maintained one thing is that
Mm-hmm.
no one is ever purely self-made. Yes, people put in effort, but we've
Yes.
all learned from someone, we've all learned from somewhere. I'd be very surprised to find anyone who is purely and entirely self-made in the community today.
Correct.
So I have a lot of people. I've always had a massive level of support from my parents. I think that's where it all starts for most of us, right?
Yes.
We wouldn't even try stuff out if our parents didn't validate it at times. I think for me, as a kid, that made a very, very big difference.
Right.
I've had a set of mentors in the community. If I have to name a few people, I think one person who always stands out for me is Vivek Sridhar. There's Nish Anil, they're both at Microsoft. There is Paras Pandir. He built the first community for community builders in India called Community Folks. My current team at Apprite, my founder, Eldad, and my head of developer relations, Tessa, they're massive support systems for me. My past internships, in fact, as well. Like my first internship was at Progate, and my manager from back then, Shun Uno, he's from Japan.
Okay.
And we still occasionally stay in touch. And he really helped me believe that I could work in communities professionally because that was my first stint trying out something in that space.
Mhm.
I've got a wonderful set of friends who are constantly backing me. People like Hemantika Mitra. Um, there is Ritvi Mishra. I think there's so many friends who I can name at this point.
Correct.
Um, Pushpa Verma. I've got teammates. I've got friends. I'll be honest. I'm losing names at this point in my brain. But there are just so many people. There's Ekansh Gupta, Nirupama Singh. Um, if I really start, I think the rest of the podcast is just going to be names.
Correct.
But I've had so many people who've supported me in my life. My parents I mentioned, my brother's always been a big support, and it helps a lot. I think I've been very grateful to have a family that's been supportive of everything I do. I think that starts there. But like I said, I've stood on the shoulders of giants, and it's also a responsibility at the same time
Yes.
to be that and help others stand on yours. I think that's one of the best parts of this community is that we do this to be able to give forward, not just to be able to take and run off, right? So even with all of these names and as grateful as I am, I really hope to be that someone for someone tomorrow, right? Where
Yes.
tomorrow, if I haven't done enough for someone for them to be able to take my name this way, then I've not done enough in communities. So it's important to be able to help other people grow forward, and that's really what I am trying to work towards a lot more now.
Okay. All right. So, Aditya, like with expert like yourself, there are so many things that we can discuss here in the podcast, but we have a limited time. So, just for that reason, like I would like to put up my last question, and that is related to your hobbies because we have talked so much about technical things, professional roles, community roles.
Mhm.
Apart from these things, like what are your hobbies or interests that you pursue outside of your professional life, and that helps you to stay motivated?
I think for me, I like to see myself as someone who's a little more multifaceted sometimes. There are a few conventional hobbies. I love gaming.
Game.
Video games is something I enjoy. I spend time with that. I have my music. I enjoy certain genres of music a lot. I listen to music a lot. I'm actually going for a concert very soon, which I'm excited about, which is a Guns N' Roses concert, which I think is going to be amazing. Um, Books, reading is a habit I'm rebuilding actually. I used to be a very avid reader as a child, and I somewhere in the middle, just with college and with communities and everything, I stopped reading as much. I still read a lot online, but I mean more so about fiction and books. So I'm rebuilding that habit. One thing that I've been spending a lot of time on, a little more formally since middle of last year, is photography.
Okay.
So that's another hobby I've been indulging in, and I've actually got my camera here, in fact, that I think I always keep with me because it's something that I keep my eye out now that I'm indulging. So I've always got my camera around with me. It's it's fun from Fujifilm, and I carry it around, and I keep my eyes open for something I can see and glimpse, and I've been putting more of my photography out there. So these are a few things I do a lot in my meantime.
All right. Okay, so thank you so much, Aditya, for taking out the time and for sharing so much information regarding the hackathon and your work and your contribution. We wish you a good luck for the future projects and your work. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for having me on, Amit, by the way. It was a wonderful time interacting with you and sharing bits of my story. And I really hope that we're going to have people from the audience in your podcast one day. I think that's the ideal, to be able to help people get to the stage where they're able to share their stories. I've had my opportunity, and I'm glad that you thought I had enough insights to share. And I hope there are people who listen to this and one day have their own insights and stories to share as well.
Yes. All right. Thank you once again.